one of the most historical towns in all of New England, and you will enjoy this show tremendously. So, anytime you'd like to come to Lunenburg, come on down. We're here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Come on in. Come on in.
You just said behind me.
All right.
We're all going to come in.
Oh, that's big. That's bigger than I thought. You went Frankie.
This is an old bumper sticker for my 275th anniversary. We're 285 years now. That's the third grade, 1932. There were a lot less third graders then. That picture was taken right outside this building. The main school used to be right where this building is. It got torn down and this Historical Society building was built in its place. Now, I want to tell you what we do here at the Lunenburg Historical Society. We preserve Lunenburg history by collecting, and I heard that third graders are ready to learn about the past.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it to you right from our bylaws, which is what we do here. We preserve Lunenburg history by collecting relics, books, manuscripts, pamphlets, anecdotes, biographies, all about research in Lunenburg's past. And I think some of these words, I don't know, they might be kind of, you understand all these words? You do?
Most of them.
I thought they might be advanced for third graders, so I know they were for me, a couple of them. So I'm going to give you some examples. Here's some relics. You recognize the old drums. Those are very, very old. You'll see those on your tour. This building is full of relics that remind us about Lunenburg's past. And here we have an Indian arrowhead. That's a genuine American Indian arrowhead. It was found a long time ago in a field in Lunenburg. Books. Books, they kind of speak for themselves. We have new books that talk about the past. We have the Lunenburg history book. Their books were made in Lunenburg in the 1810s and 1820s. Pamphlets. We got old pamphlets. We've got some of them are picture books. Some of them are very old histories. There's one history that was written about Lunenburg, and it was written in the 1860s. So it reaches way back to the colonial period. And we have a lot of town record books, and those help us a lot when we do our research. These, an anecdote is like a story. And there are a lot of old stories about Lunenburg. There's one story that goes around, it's about a horse that got a Christian burial. There's ghost stories. There's one house in Lunenburg that some people think is haunted. Personally, I have a hard time being convinced that ghosts are real. You can read the stories and you can make your own judgment about that. So anecdotes are stories that are about a person or place that's real, but it's up to discussion whether they're really true or not. Maybe yes, maybe no. Biographies. A biography is a writing about a person's life, and it's typically written by somebody else. An autobiography is when you write about your own life. That's right. Some of the biographies, a lot of the biographies that we're familiar with are written about famous people, like Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, but there are also a lot of biographies written about regular people like us. This happens to be about Luther Burbank, who for a few years lived in Lunenburg. He lived right up the street here on Main Street, and he was famous for finding and developing a potato that we all eat now. When we go to McDonald's, for instance, the type of potatoes that they use were originally developed by Luther Burbank in the 1870s. This is a photo we found on eBay, and we were able to identify that little boy there who was about your age, and the girl as well, because somebody wrote on the back, Allison Carl Brown. Well, Carl Brown, when he grew up to be an adult, he ran the store in the center there that we now know as what? Hadwin Park Market. Same building. As you can see, it's been changed a little bit, but the two buildings are easy to recognize. That's like an armored horse and buggy right there. If you put a magnifying glass on there, it says cash for your information. We just talked about Whalen Park. It's right by the lake, like Whalen. That's how some of us adults remember it. There it is in the 1940s. It was always crowded. Everybody was having a lot of fun there. And there's a roller coaster we used to ride. Gave us a thrill. And there's a model of it in the next room. There's the roller coaster again. I'm showing this picture because you'll see that clown sitting over in the corner. In the next room. And there's a ride that you'll see in the next room as well. That was known as the bouncer. And you had to have a very strong stomach. Should we go to the next room? Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to ask for your cooperation. There's that funny mirror there in the corner, okay? Can you stand at a distance because you'll see yourself and you'll be all, stretched like this. So.
Or have you been to Six Flags amusement park? You've been there. Everybody knows about it. Well, Lunenburg used to have a mini Six Flags. It was called Whalen Park. It had all sorts of fun rides, a roller coaster, boat rides on the lake, all sorts of good things. And yes, they had funny mirrors too. And so, if you want to take a quick look, go right ahead. Why don't you line up and one at a time, and then that's the best way to do it, and then let somebody else come. Okay? Next. Pick the next one. Do it quickly. There you go. Yeah, that's good.
I'm a peanut! Small. Wait, I'm so tired. Look
Are you ready to talk to them?
Now, there used to be a theater there also, a play, where live actors would perform. And these are all kinds of flyers that show who was there. Now, you don't remember any of these, I'm sure, but anybody ever heard of Annie Get Your Gun? It's a play, movie. Oh, this is old stuff. But anyway, they had all kinds of famous actors and actresses there. And over there, this clown, he used to welcome everyone to Whalen Park. And he was equipped with sound, so you hear laughing and welcoming and all of those good things.
How do you make it laugh?
Well, it was all recorded, okay? And then that blue ride over there was one of the I forget what it was called, but maybe one of your teachers remember, huh?
It was the bouncer.
A bouncer, okay. And that was great fun too. They had a whip, they had dodgem cars, all sorts of things. And it cost an awful lot. See the sign up here? 25 cents a day. Spend a whole day. How about that? Huh?
I'm
I
going.
go all season for $19.99. Gee, you probably get an allowance that big today, don't you? Okay. Okay. So, why don't you head over now to Mrs. Burnett, and she's going to tell you something else about Lunenburg.
People do to earn a living in Lunenburg.
They be farmers or have a job.
Lots of farmers. Well, have a job, but there weren't really any factories. It wasn't like now when somebody can go to Fitchburg or Munster and get a job in a factory. Well, one of the things that was done was to make, they called them straw hats, like this. And about 200 years ago, there was a man named Mr. Putnam who owned the store across the street where Hadlin Farms. You saw a teacher sitting in the other room. Mr. Putnam used to import bundles of palm leaves. You know what palm leaves? You've seen pictures of palm trees, probably. Great big long leaves. Well, they would send bundles of those up to him in Lunenburg. And he had to have them dried out and bleached and split. And they split them on a thing like this by cranking it by hand. I can't quite picture how that would have really split them, but that's what they say it was. And then the women who lived in town would come to Mr. Putnam's store and pick up bundles of these split palm leaves from him, take them home, and the women and their children would make these hats. And then when the hats were done, they could take them back to Mr. Putnam's store and swap them for groceries or any of the other things he sold that they needed. And the records tell us that there was one girl, it doesn't say how old she was, one girl who made 18 hats in one day. I don't think I could make one hat in one day, but that's what it tells us. Another thing that was important, an important way to make a living in Lunenburg, again about 200 years ago, started, was to print and bind books, especially Bibles. You know the empty building across, just beyond the traffic light, over on the corner where Trudy's Treats used to be? Well, there was a Mr. Colonel Cushing who lived there. And he was one of the ones who printed and bound books. And there's two other houses when you go down Lancaster Avenue where it was also done. I don't know if you remember, just a few minutes ago, Mr. Larkin mentioned that there was a horse that was connected with the bookbinding. Actually, he supplied the power for a foundry down on Lancaster Avenue that made the letters to do the printing with. And I suppose he was down in the cellar and walked around in a circle. Somehow he was harnessed up to something that went up through the floor and supplied power. And when he died, they said because he had helped to print Bibles, they said he was a Christian horse, and the minister came and said a prayer when he was buried in the yard down there. And if you walk around in front of this case, you can see the big Bible there says it was a Cushing Bible made in Lunenburg, and the smaller one next to it is a Greenough Bible. That comes from the house farther down the street where they had the horse.
There. That's how I make my toast. If I'm gonna make you waffles, somebody said, how about a grilled cheese sandwich? I'll do the same thing. But if you look in there, I'm gonna put your bread right in there. That's how you make your French toast. Huh? Yeah. And not only that, make our waffles. We're gonna do the same thing with this. Same thing as I'm gonna make a waffle. You see how that is? That's how they make. But you gotta, the big thing to remember, and even these little bowls, Or this sausage, this is how you cook your sausage, you hung your sausage, you put it on the fireplace. But everything was for the hands. You also remember it was handmade. Anything you see in here, they used to have to hand make these. So all these weren't done at the factory. They were done by, you always hear of the man, what do they call those men that do? Blacksmith, that's right. And they used to do this. They used to have to hand make all these and put them together. These are different type of grills. Put it on the fire to cook something. All different sizes, all different shapes. All again handmade, bent. Maybe we need the wood. All this is handmade. This sickle handle, all handmade. Bent. You say you can't bend wood. You heat it up. Maybe get a cook-a-tree. Maybe cook-a-trees. Maybe they did it that way. How about if I wanted to go to the post office? Went down to general store. This is one of the first post offices in Lunenburg. Jones, Smith, even that chef. They used to have it. These are the old scales. They used to weigh things. See, so everything was again small. Big, very big. Come on down. Very big in Fitchburg with a yarn mill. And they used to make yarn with the sweaters, sweatshirts, hats, the gloves, the old spinning wheels. You'll see these. This is how they used to collect all the yarn, used to put it on. All these are different instruments that they used to, tools that they used to use for yarn. See in the back, they have weaves that they used to make. Better still, I'm going to make you some cheese right here. Look in there. See the cheese? Any cheese in there? But you see the cheese. See, this is the apple one that went in the back. I get the extra shot cheese. Chop it up. I mean, marine, different type of things, different flags, different packages, canteens, horns, binoculars. A lot of people used to collect buttons. Have you ever heard of people collecting buttons? Yeah. There they are, right up there. Go, keep on going, and you'll see some more. This is a hay rake. You see the big animals, the big rakes behind them, and the hay. That's how you do the small portion by hand. Now I want to collect apples off the apple tree. Right? Big chunk. How do you think they do it today? How do they get up? They shake them. They shake the tree. They climb the tree. Yeah, but how about if I can't reach it from the ladder? Or use this, exactly. You get the apple ladders. Do you see those apple ladders? They're made like real small at the top. They go down big.
And I know what those do. You hold it up on the edge and it goes anywhere, and then you scoop it up and you get an apple.
In 1750, there wasn't any heavy equipment like we have, construction equipment. So how do you think they built this? Huge rocks. So it must have taken several men to carry these rocks here and build this so that it wouldn't fall down. And do you know what this is for? Why did they have a compound?
So they could, if a cow or any farm animal got out of the pen, they could come here and retrieve it.
So that's what they did, and this was all farmland, this whole area. Very, very few private homes were here, and so they had, this is for large farm animals, so cows and what else? What? Bulls, horses, what other animals do you think would come here? I don't think there were llamas then. What do you think? Chicken? Well, don't you think a chicken might get out of there? He might get out of there. So yes.
Pig?
I'll bet a pig. So if I lost a pig, I would come here to see if someone had found it. And if they found it, I could come and get it, but I had to pay to get it out. Like the operator said, how much do you think I'd have to pay to get my pig out of there? and water and take care of it. Wouldn't I? Yeah. So, does anyone have any questions about that? Anybody? Do you understand what it was for, when it was built, who built it? And because you're such a good kid, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open the gate. And I'm going to let you go in, but there's a rule. You cannot jump on the stones because I don't want anyone to get hurt. Those are big boulders that have been there for years and years. And they could fall and hurt you. And one other thing, when I checked the pound this morning, I saw a friendly snake. So the group that was here before saw my friendly snake. And I hope he's gone in the wall now, because I live right there. And I don't want him to come into my yard, but you watch for that friendly snake, okay?
Is he poisonous?
No, he's not poisonous, he's a friendly one. I still don't like him, even though he's friendly.
I don't think
Okay. Now we're going to have to pay to get you out. You accept credit cards?
I like to. There's no cash these days. Guys, maybe walk away until they come back. You're lucky you live right there.
I do. I am lucky. I can look down at that beautiful pond.
You can come in here.
I can come in here, but what I see on that pond sometimes, you wouldn't believe what I see. Well, this year, I had a river otter here. I did, and the river otter was about this big, and they dive in and out of the water like this. And they're very, very beautiful. They're graceful, and they.
Her name is Grace.
And do you know what a blue heron looks like? That you do. Oh, with long legs and a skinny.
Those are
leg.
the ones that are big beaks.
Yeah.
It's hard to see them.
Yeah.
There's two legs.
There are.
Oh my god.
You saw that? Well, back up and I do not like that. Well, the snake over here. Yeah? No. Now show me where
I'm squeezing in. Jordan, put your hand. Smile. That's over here.
Come on in.
Look at that.
Let's get started. My name is Mary Ann Sidolnik, and I live in Lunenburg. And not only do I live in Lunenburg, I'm a retired teacher from the middle school. I used to teach physical science in the 8th grade, and I love working with children. So this was a perfect fit, and why Mrs. Diamantopoulos always taps me on the shoulder. So it's good to have you here. I'm here to sort of explain what you're standing in right now. And I wonder if you know, does anybody know what this is? Yes. Memorial Park? It's a memorial park, that's right, or a memorial garden, whatever way you want to refer to it. What does the word memorial mean? Well, wait a minute, wait after.
It's a place where you honor people who have died before they probably served in the
Very good, very good. You guys have got this down. That's exactly right. This park, this gathering area that we're talking about right now, really is a place for us to come and think about what people have done for us over a lifetime. And this young lady was absolutely right in that it's dedicated to those people, men and the women, who have given the ultimate gift to us. What would be the ultimate gift that they give all of us? Anybody want to take a stab? Yeah. Well, that was the gift they were giving us. That's exactly right. And what did they do that God has said here? Over there. Anybody? Well, let me just say, these people gave their life so that we might have freedom. That's a pretty weighty statement right there. But that's the actual truth. And even today, we have people overseas that are still in that situation where their lives are in danger because they're working to protect the freedoms that we have. Isn't that amazing? So when we come into this park, we are in effect thanking them. Excuse me. We take a moment to remember, memory, memorial. We're taking a moment to remember because from the time this country was founded, when the Pilgrims came over, we have had to earn our freedom again and again and again. So we live in a wonderful country with opportunity for all because we have freedom. But it's not, I always told my own students and my children, freedom is not free. And this is built to bring that forward so that you'll think about it once in a while. And if you look around, you'll see various stones, plaques on them. And those plaques really are telling about the world wars that we've been involved in. Right here we have Korean. This one is Vietnam. This one is World War I. This one is World War II. So these were conflicts, armed conflicts, where we had to go and fight to defend our freedom. And so at some point in time, people in Lunenburg decided that we needed to have a place, not a cemetery, because we have cemeteries in town, and you can go to cemeteries and lay wreaths on soldiers and sailors and other people who have given their lives for us. But a place where we can go and just be thankful that we've had these people in our background. Are there any questions? Yes.
Why is the World War II start there?
That's a very, very good question. I was born in 1940, so I'm really an old woman. But 1940 was when World War II was fought. And to my understanding, it was the biggest war. Most men died. I mean, just when they decided to go in France and start taking back from the Nazis all the things that they had taken from the people who should be there. Thousands upon thousands and thousands of men died. It was a horrific war, a real horrific war. And the numbers, the number is too big for me to, it makes me sad to think of the number of men that had to die for us to do that. But if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't be what we are today. We wouldn't be a free country. So I think if you look at that, you can see there's the most number of local names. I'll let you look at this one. But there's a large number of people men from Lunenburg died in that conflict, and they did die in these others, but the numbers were nowhere near what died in the Second World War. Yes.
Why is the news on the...
Good question. This memorial park has been here for quite a while, but people didn't take advantage of it because the grass would grow a little too high and there was no sidewalk to walk on. It just wasn't appealing to anybody. So about 4 or 5 years ago, a young man who was an Eagle Scout, and I don't remember his name, but I love him for what he did, took on the project of building this walkway and around the flag. And if you look at it, you'll see occasionally there are bricks that have names engraved in it. He couldn't afford to do 2 all the work and then to buy all the materials. The brick are pretty expensive. So he actually did a little campaign and sold, a person would buy a brick and that brick would have their name on it, whatever they wanted on it. And it would be part of this sidewalk forever. So it was a way of thanking them for donating money to help him complete this project. And if you walk, the closer you get to the flagpole, there are more of the names in the sidewalk. But I think there's all the way out, there's a few here, there, and everywhere. Any other questions? Well, let me just close in by saying, when you go to bed tonight, one of the things that I ask all the groups to do is just say, in your head to yourself, to thank you for all those people that allow us to live in the wonderful country that we live in today, with the freedoms that we have. This is something, we're like unique in the history of time. The United States is unique because we allowed people to do what they want to do within boundaries. We don't say you can, because you're free, you just can't do everything, right? You have to drive on the roads the way they tell you to. You have to obey laws. But that's just keeping order among a very large number of people. But you can do what you want to do. You can aspire to be the President of the United States. You can aspire to be a chef. Whatever it is that you want to do, you can do it. You can do it. If you want it, you can do it here. No one is going to put a blockade in your way and say, no, that's not for you. No. We welcome all. We love all. And we thank everybody who's gone before us for that privilege.
It's beautiful. Did you know this belongs to you?
Yes.
It does? It belongs to you too? You too? I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. There's a flag right here, a beauty, and a couple over here. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, you know that we are part of a very old town, one of the very oldest towns even in New England. Almost all the little towns had a common. This is a common. It means it belongs to everybody. It belongs to you. This town, it does, and this town has two commons. And you're going to see the other vicinity as well. This is called the lower common. And so what do you suppose that one is? Very good, the upper common. So we had two common. What's a common about? It's about belonging to everybody. It still does, okay? In the old days, if you had a bunch of cows and you didn't have a place to pasture them all, you might want to bring them over to the common because it belonged to everybody in town. If you had goats and you didn't have enough room at your house, you could bring them here and let them eat the grass and then take them back home again. They also did military deals here, which is probably part of what you're going to really think about today. It was somebody by the name of Captain John Fulch, and he had 27 men all lined up to fight for freedom for our country. Remember, we were not United States of America, we belonged to Great Britain.
England.
To England. To England, to Great Britain, that's right. And so he gathered men here and they practiced in case they ever really needed to fight for independence. So they had a meeting here, and he practiced here, and then they got word from Lexington that there was something going on. The British were coming into town, bringing all their weapons and their munitions, and so he gathered all his 27 men, and they left from here and marched to Lexington, and by the time they got there, it was all over. You're right. If you're a Cub Scout, you know that they do that reenactment about 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Anyway, when he was here practicing with his men, he planted a tree. He lived over on what's Electric Avenue, Route 13, near Buttonwood Place. But Buttonwood's a very famous tree around here. And it was planted where that trough is down there. Why do you think they have a trough down there? Why don't they just have a little monument? Any idea what that trough is before? It's full of water. I'm sorry, I'm going right down there. We're going to go down and see it in a second. Anyway, they called it the Liberty Tree, and that was there until 1938, which is quite a long time, a couple of hundred years, and then they had to cut it down.
And it's a buttonwood tree.
Buttonwood tree. Look it up online.
So that's why the Girl Scout was for buttonwood.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, a very famous tree, and that's they always did their drills around that. So let's take a hike down by the little trough and see what it says on it. Okay. There's a little bit, a few pieces of the original schoolhouse right across the street and in the back of that building. That was the original schoolhouse that was here in Lunenburg. In 1861, once again, we've got a war. We won the independence, now we've got another war. Which one might that be?
Listening.
No, back, older.
Hands up there.
No, back.
Civil War?
Yes, thank you. The Civil War. That's the one where we fought to keep, please to keep this country in one piece. The North were fighting the South, and so they had, again, military drills and practice. And while they were practicing, here comes a bald eagle. He's flying around. And these guys are all a little nervous. This is their own little town, and now they're going to have to go off to war to fight for our country. And they're a little nervous and going, who's going to win this war? What's it like here to be? Here comes this big bald eagle. Flies around, gets everybody's attention, and he flies that way, which is north. And what do you think they thought about that eagle?
I think we said to follow him.
No, not to follow it, but it was giving them a sign. This is legend. This is just a story.
The United States.
Right. It was going to come to the United States. So the North, that they were here, the North, was going to win. That's the way they thought about it. It's like a symbol, okay? And that's the eagle story. Another thing that happened here, they disciplined people. If they were trashing or shoplifting, and they would discipline people here. Maybe you've gone to some historic places where they had stocks. Here are the stocks where you put your hands in your head and you have to sit there and you can't move. The worst part, of course, is that you're embarrassed. There you are. Right here. Here goes the traffic riding their horses and wagons and horses wagon. Here goes Grandma. She's going down the street, and there you are stuck in the stocks. Holy moly! So there was discipline done here, and public punishment for criminals. And you know, whatever that person was in the stocks for, they didn't do it. That took care of that. Public meetings, protests. Suppose your neighbor has cows that are getting out all the time. Don't forget the public meetings. Cows getting out. People would come together and say, "Okay, listen, I want you to come up to the common tonight. We're gonna get together and have a meeting about these people who can't seem to keep the cows in the pasture." And so we all get together, talk about it. Maybe everybody walks down to your house and says, "We're your neighbors. We're or maybe your rooster. Wake everybody up at 4 o'clock. Okay? So public protest, sign petitions, same thing. I don't want it to happen this way. I want a better school. So we all sign a petition. This is where they would come together. This is the common. This is where I'll meet you. You might live over there, you might live down in my guest wherever, you might live over in Whalen. This is where we all come together. Recent history. The bricks, you may have had time to see a few of those. You will recognize some names. Some of them are donated in memory of people who did wonderful things. There's a bench over here, and then people, when you pass after the prom?
Oh, I know about prom.
Tell me about the prom.
Prom is when girls and boyfriends, as they dress up and they go to the school with a big party.
And a big dance. That's
Yeah, the
right.
big dance.
And but they buy
And when they're
really
in high
beautiful
school.
dresses,
Oh.
and then in recent years they come to and they pose for pictures here, and so we invited everybody. And I would like to come up, which I didn't. It was boring, right? It was boring. But anyway, because and maybe you've been to the people who have weddings. They can be married here or come back just for the pictures. I have a daughter that was married in town, and then be here. Because this is our property, huh? Our town. It's beautiful. Band concerts. Anybody ever come to the band concerts? Okay, try again this summer. Yeah. Yes.
And when we were driving by, we heard lions screaming.
Right, that was the rest of we have another memorial here. I'm going to take you over. That's going to be the direction you're headed, and I don't know how your time is doing, but right up here is another memorial. And that's a young man who grew up in this town. Isn't that a gorgeous church? This is a memorial, if anybody's reading it, for Kevin Sozik. And he's a young man who grew up in town. If anybody knows Mrs. Sozik, I believe she still works in the in the high school office. And because the whole family is a very big part of the town. He is not buried, but that was the 9/11/2001 before you kids were born.
They actually used logs. They got huge logs because, of course, are there many trees around Lunenburg? Many trees. They got huge logs and they rolled the building on the logs. Now, what do you suppose moved the logs? Do you think manpower did that? Or do you think they used something else to move the logs? What do you think?
Wheels. No wheels.
No, they used the logs instead of wheels, because you know how logs can roll along? What do you think?
Horses.
Horses, excellent. Horses pulled the logs. So they moved it all the way back here from 25 feet. And when this building was originally moved here, it only had one story. That means it only had one floor. And they decided that would not be enough room to house all the things that they wanted to do in the town hall. So they added a second story to it. They jacked it up and added what's called a second story. Now there's something really interesting about the cellar here. I always tell this to the kids because it's a little creepy and I wouldn't want to go down there. But I know a man who has been down there and he told me about the cellar. The cellar has these enormous tree trunks in it that support this building. Because of all the many trees we have in New England and in Lunenburg, they decided to use these tree trunks. So he said it's a dirt floor down there, and when you walk around down there, it's like walking through a forest, only the forest doesn't have any branches or leaves on the trees. It's just these big, huge stumps. And that's what supports this building. That's what holds this whole building up. So it's pretty fascinating to me how they did that. All right, now I'm going to ask you if you know what goes on in this building. If you look up here, you may have seen this on TV. What do you, this is kind of important to the town. What do you think happens here? Right here, do you see these chairs and these microphones? Maybe some of you have seen this. Maybe some of your parents watch these goings on TV. Yes?
This is where the school committee meeting.
Yes, this is where Ms. Combs and the school committee meet, your superintendent, and this is where the selectmen meet. They're the guys who kind of run the town. They meet here, and you can watch them on television. It's televised. Now, one of the kids said to me, "What's that screen?" You know, they had more questions about the things in this building. "What's that screen back there?" I said, "That is a screen where if they want to put on a PowerPoint presentation with a computer, and they want to show pictures on TV, they flash them on that screen back there." So that's what this building is used for now. How about downstairs? Have any of you been in here with your parents downstairs by those counters? What do you think goes on there? Yes. What have your parents done there? When they come in here, on one of the other groups came in, they said, "My mother comes in here all the time and I come in with her and she signs papers." I said, yes, that's what they do here. They sign papers, yes. Excellent. If you want to go to the town beach in summer, this is where you get your passes. What else can you do here? Yes.
You get dog passes and dog license.
Excellent. You get your dog license here. What else do your parents do here? I had to give a hint to one of the classes. I said, think about something that they may have to do that begins with a T. Yes.
It's not that one, but
It's a different one.
give money to the pay their taxes.
That's what I was looking for. They pay their taxes. I said it begins with a T. They come here and pay their taxes. And that's why you're always seeing your parents signing all these papers, I think. If you need a special paper signed, you can go to Miss Herrick, who is the town clerk, and you can have her, she's also called a notary public. And if you need a special town official to sign one of your special documents, you can go to her and she does that also. So do you think that's all the town hall was ever used for, was those kind of things? No. I'm going to tell you something pretty interesting. The reason I know this is not because I know everything, but it's because my husband has lived in this town since he was 3 years old. And he's done everything you can possibly do in this town hall. We run the Conrad's down here at the fish and chips place and the ice cream place. And he's lived here since he was 3, and his dad started it in 1946. So he knows a lot about the history of this town and a lot of the things that he's done here. When he was a kid, he said this upstairs didn't have carpeting up here, and it wasn't all blocked off with these false walls or anything. It was bigger. And they had a basketball court up here, and the guys used to play basketball when they were like middle school and high school age up here. They also had all the guys from the town, the older folks, his dad used to do this, used to come and play poker and cards up here. And he used to have to come and get his father. His mother would say, go up to the town hall and get your father and tell him it's time to come home. He'd be up here playing cards. They had classes here. At one point, when the population of Lunenburg got too big, as it was getting now, and they had to switch all the things in the schools around, he had a music class here when he was in the 8th grade. In high school, some of the boys had shop class downstairs. So they used this building for many, many different things. It's just amazing what they used it for. They had school dances here. They had celebrations up here. At one point, there was one little room downstairs that was designated as the post office. They didn't even have a big federal post office here. One little room was the library. Before they had the Ritter Library and now the new library that you have now. One little room, one kid said, how could they fit all the books in a room that little? I said, because they didn't have any books. Remember, this was back when books were first being printed in the 17 and early 1800s. So it was used for all of those different things. But one of the things he said that was the most fun for the kids was something called the Grange Fair. Now, most of the people in the town at that time did what for a job? Who can tell me what most of the people did for a job? They didn't get in a car and drive to Boston to work. What did they do?
They would do like get on a bike and give people the paper.
Well, they might be paper deliverers, right? I'm not speaking about kids though, I'm speaking about adults. Yes?
They were farmers.
They were farmers. That shows you that they were farmers, because whose house is that? In that big picture there on the town seal. Whose house is that? What's that guy's name? Do you remember his name?
I think his first name is
Samuel. Samuel. One kid said Samuel Adams. I said, no, you got the first name right, but it wasn't Samuel Adams. Samuel, there's a street in Lunenburg named after him because he was our first settler. Yes.
Samuel Page.
Samuel Page, yes. And what do you suppose Samuel Page did for a living? Everybody say it.
Farmer.
He was a farmer, and that's why it shows you those things. What do those things represent up there? What do those show you? Yes. Things that you would see on a farm. Those are the things they grew in Lunenburg on the farm. Almost all of Lunenburg were farmers in those days. Now we only have like 3 main farms left here. You probably go to the Cherry Hill ice cream place, and there's the Cherry Hill farm, and the Stillman's farm, and the Latanzis have a farm now, or Jimmy Latanzi has a farm. And there are also farms like on Flat Hill Road. We have the peach farms and the apple farms, but it used to be almost everybody in Lunenburg was a main occupation. So that was always pretty interesting to me too. I'm trying to see what else I can tell you here. Oh, as far as the clock tower goes, it was pretty interesting what they did up there. They used that clock tower for many reasons. Being that everyone was a farmer in town, and they didn't all wear a watch when they worked, there was a man who, his only sole job was to ring the bell all the time during the day. They rang the bell at 12 noon and they'd say, oh, time to have lunch. So the farmers would all stop, have their lunch. 6 p.m., they rang the bell again. Time to knock off work, time to go home to your family. So they used it for that reason. They also used it like a fire siren because they didn't really have a building for the fire department. Now the fire department is volunteer, but in those days it was really volunteer because you ran from your farm or field or your home or wherever you were. You got on your horse and you came when there was a fire. Well, there was a special code. The bells that rang had special codes that people knew that it was a fire, that it was for the fire alarm. So there were many, many things that happened here. Many things. The bell itself was so huge when they purchased the bell, they had to have about 15 or 20 men hoist it up into the belfry. It weighs over 1,000, I have it somewhere here, 1,200 some pounds. So it's very historical also. They also had a little room for a jail in here at one point. They used the bell tower. One of the things I found very interesting was during World War II, which most of you kids don't even know much about, but they used to call it the big one, the big war. They used the bell tower as a spotting place. So kids would say, what do you mean? Well, when I grew up in Wisconsin, and in the town that I lived in, they had a library that had a tall bell tower, and I still remember this. Like, I was born in 1944, not 1844. And I still remember people going up in that bell tower when I was a kid and looking through binoculars, spotting enemy planes. And they did the same thing here. They were up in this belfry. There was a man or a woman, I think it was probably mostly men in those days, who had the assignment to be up there all the time spotting for German planes, enemy planes, Japanese and German planes. So this building has been used for just so many things. And that's one of the reasons why it's on the National Historical Register. I don't think there's too much else I can tell you, but I can share 2 things with you that I have. One of them is, if you have a chance, you probably will never climb Clark's Hill. Because I know that the 3rd grades did it 2 years ago, and they decided that was enough of that. I mean, it was quite a rigorous climb up there. That was where the original Samuel Page home was, on the top of Clark's Hill. Well, when you get up there, you can see for miles. I mean, it's a beautiful view. But climbing up there is kind of a rigorous climb. At the top of it, there is a marker, and I'll pass a picture around of the marker. It says, home site of first settler Samuel Page, and it was 1718. And then the town was incorporated, means it became a town in 1728. But that's when he settled there. So that is the, you can look at it and pass it around. That is the marker that designates where his home was. Now, he is buried in the South Cemetery. There are 2 cemeteries in Lunenburg, the South and the North. When I first started teaching in Lunenburg in 69, that seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? We were allowed to take the kids to that cemetery, the North Cemetery, and we were allowed to do what's called grave rubbings. And I used to take my class down there, and the kids would look, and they would choose a person who lived here in the 17 or 1800s. They go way back to the late 1700s. They would be able to rub their graves, and then they would have that to take home, and they just loved doing it. Well, I happen to have a grave rubbing. They used to do it on parchment paper with charcoal, but this one is not parchment paper. This is done on what's called Pellon. Pellon is a material that people who sew use to make like a collar stand up or cuffs, nice and crisp. Well, a lady who was a parent of my class, I believe it was one of my first classes, gave me this, and she and her child had gone to the South Cemetery, which is where Samuel Page's grave is. When you go there, you will recognize it because it has a wrought iron, if you choose to take your children there this summer. It's pretty interesting to see. There's a wrought iron fence. Maybe some of you have been there already, around it. And it will have a little plaque, and marker that explains that Samuel Page's grave. Well, this happens to be a rubbing from his grave. And if you notice now, it's so worn off even. It was done with Pelon and charcoal. And it says, here lies the body of Samuel Page, and the rest of it I can't even see anymore. But it's in the history of Lunenburg. This is the book that was published in Lunenburg for the bicentennial in 78. I got this from my mother-in-law. It says 1718 to 1978. And when I got it, I took it home and read the whole thing. You probably think I'm quite weird doing something like that, but I am from the Midwest, and all my life, I always was interested in colonial history. So when I married Mr. Conrad and moved here, I started to really get into, I went to every single place around in all the states of New England to see all the historical places. And I wanted to learn a lot about this town that I moved into. So I read this whole thing. And I read so many interesting things. I mean, I could tell you a million things, but I don't want to bore you to death. But I do want to tell you one thing that's interesting about this grave rubbing. They were allowing people to do this grave rubbing for many, many years. And then I'd say maybe about 25 years ago, it became a law that you're not allowed to do it anymore. Can anybody guess why you can't do it anymore? If you can't guess, I can tell you, but I see someone back there with a stripe. What do you think? Why can't people do that anymore?
It might damage a grave, and some graves are very old and they'll break, and that won't be a good thing.
Excellent. If you look at some of the graves in the North Cemetery, they're real skinny. Has anyone ever gone? We used to ride our bikes through there. They're real skinny, and they were made just on like one tablet of slate, and it's very, very thin. Also, they were all the words on them, like "Here lies Samuel Page," were engraved in there. So many people did grave rubbings, and after all of the temperature changes, the weather, the bad storms, they started wearing right out. So you can't do that anymore. It's against the law. And one of the reasons is because in the big cemeteries that have real historical significance, those are too big. Those are too big tongue twister words. In that case, like the Granary Burying Ground in Boston, where most of the famous patriots are buried, like Samuel Adams, not Samuel Page, Samuel Adams, Patrick Henry, I gotta think of some more that were buried there. Paul Revere. They did that so many times that they started wearing off all of the words. And then if you go to Concord, there's a cemetery there where all famous writers and poets were buried. They started to do the same thing there. So they said, that's enough of that. It became a national law. You're not allowed to do grave rubbings anymore. So I treasure this. I'm going to give it to the third grade one of these years before I die. But I do treasure it because I've had it for a real long time. And I've learned a lot about our town, so I hope that you've learned a lot about the town. And I hope that the next 2 places you go will teach you even some more. Yes? Pardon me? Do I remember? No, I don't, honey, because I've had so many classes. I had 37 classes and all. I don't remember who the student was that gave me that, but the mother gave it to me, and the mother and the girl actually went and did it together. They did the grave rubbing together.